Boguslav, and I research researchers. As a researcher, I get this incredible opportunity to advance science and knowledge, and I do not take that lightly. Taxpayers like you fund research, so we owe it to you and ourselves to ensure you can access and understand our new knowledge and findings. Welcome to the Ignorance Podcast, where we learn about current questions in research. I live by the motto, ignorance is bliss, because when you don't know something, it's an opportunity to learn. Let's welcome our guest researcher for today. Please introduce yourself by name only and your favorite thing to do outside of work.
Hi, I'm Micah Voraritskul, and I love to cook when I'm not working. I love cooking all kinds of dishes. I like cooking Asian. I like cooking Italian. I like cooking just about anything.
Is there like a specific dish that you like to cook?
Well, I was born in Thailand. In fact, my real name is Somchai, which is a very Thai name. And so I like cooking Thai food especially, but I like all Asian cuisines. Those are my go-tos. So anything that you can put in a big wok over high heat and then put over rice, I'm down for that.
Yeah. So what questions drive you?
Man, tons of questions drive me. But, of late and with regard to my work, the biggest one is, are humans going to make it out alive of this AI revolution? And obviously with all of the things going on with AI advancement in the world, that has been the most on my mind. But my question was, will humans flourish in the age of AI? Will humans remain relevant, and how? And when I started this whole journey into AI research in 2023, when all the large language models were proliferating, my question was more like, how can we flourish? Now it's more like, how can we actually survive and thrive? So it's changed a little bit.
Why this question?
Well, because I'm a human and I care deeply about the beauty of humanity. And I think that we are unique in the universe. And I think I want to see us survive. We all have a survival instinct, but I want to see humans flourish. I want to see humans do well. And in fact, when AI first came on the scene, I thought, you know what, maybe this is a way that is actually going to help tip the scales more toward equity. So, I saw the opportunity for us to celebrate all of the things that made us human as machines kind of proliferate in our lives. I hoped that it would drive us more toward our humanity and more toward equity. And I'm not sure I've seen that happen, but it certainly is one of the driving questions for me.
Yeah. So I guess diving a little deeper into it, what does it mean to be human?
Man, that's a deep existential question. If you asked the typical kind of philosophers, they would say, well, Descartes said, I think that therefore I am. And I don't know that I would define humanity as a thought process in so much as it is. I mean, we're born, we all have mothers and fathers. We walk on this earth together. We know that our life is short and will be over before we know it. We don't know what happens after we die. We do know that we love and care for other people. We do know that we're born into families. Some of them are broken and some of them are whole. And we know that we were born also as human beings to use words. Humans use words. Humans think. Humans want to solve problems. Humans have this knack of making things, like innovating and making things faster, cheaper, and better. And so all of those things run into it. But man, what it means to be a human, I mean, we are unique among the species of living things on the earth in that we make music for fun. We tell jokes to each other. We can pretend. We can wonder about things that happen after death. We can spot inequity and not just get mad about it. We can actually try and work for a solution. So I think there's a lot of things that make us human.
Yeah, it's funny. The interesting one about like imagination, I would semi-argue like we know that our dog dreams. We can hear kind of like barking in her sleep. We think she's like dreaming about chasing squirrels or other things like that. And so there has to be some imagination there. Another one I love is, elephants do burials. They have funerals for their dead. They kind of like a mourning period, right? Where it's really clear that the herd is sad about what happened. And so it's interesting, like this idea of really what makes us uniquely human, I think matters. And another one I love to point out is that AI is not our first companion, right? Animals, actually, like dogs, are some of our companions that we've had in the past. And it hasn't been as controversial, right?
Right.
Having a dog in a fire truck, or, police dogs or other things like that. Or even dogs for the blind, right? There's lots of situations where animals really help us in so many ways. And there's not a similar problem.
You said something that was really interesting about animals having an imagination. And I know in the Judeo-Christian tradition and also in the Muslim tradition, you've got this idea that there is this creative being that created the universe and all life, right? And that, if you count all those people that have been born into that tradition, you're talking about more than half the world's population. So it's not an insignificant human idea that there's this creative God that made the world and that made humans and living animals. And what's interesting about this story to me and what it means to be human is it gives us a definition for what we are and what our place in the world is. It sets us as stewards of all living things and as sort of the highest order thinking beings on the planet. And one of the interesting things about the story is that it says that we are made in the image of God. And does that mean that we look like this God that created? Does it mean something different? And I think it has to do with the fact that we're creative, and this God created the universe with a speech event, which is really interesting to me. So this is a God who speaks and who creates through speech. And then this God in the story gives us human beings a voice and a way to communicate with one another. And one of the first jobs that he gives us is your job is to name all the living things. I think this is a really interesting thing. Put names on it, call it something, and classify it into some kind of taxonomy. I can't imagine what the first humans' brains must have been like to be able to do something like that, but it's phenomenal. And so I love that story. And I think for me, that story helps me understand what it means to be human.
Yeah, so to that point, there's many different lenses of looking at what it means to be human. There's a religious lens. All the different religions out there have a slightly different lens on what it really means and are trying to give meaning to humanity. There's a philosophical lens. There's actually kind of an artificial intelligence lens, right? There's all these different fields out there that really think about this. And it really matters to all of us because we're human, as you were saying too. So why do you care about artificial intelligence or AI?
Right before we pivot into that question, I do want to say one more thing that I think is kind of an interesting idea. A friend of mine, his name is Klaus Luning, and he's an 83-year-old brilliant engineer that is retired now. He was a maritime engineer. He used to build also these incredible machines that would harness all of the toxic gases out of the petroleum refinery process and actually encapsulate them and make them into good positive things. It was crazy what he knows how to do. Anyway, so he's also very much into music, and he's been instrumental in my life in helping me think about what it means to be human. He's by the way, an atheist, but he told me this story of two world-class pianists, Lang and Yuja Wang. These are two of the best pianists in the world. And Lang is kind of a flamboyant. He's got a lot of style and flair, but the way he plays doesn't really reflect the way he dresses. He plays really solidly. Yuja Wang is 5'0". Her feet barely even can touch the pedals from the piano bench. And these pianists can play the exact same sheet of music. And if you're listening to the pieces, they couldn't sound more different. It's just crazy the way that they express, the way they press the notes, the way they pause, how hard they hit the note, all of those little things. And Klaus called it tilt. And he said, yeah, Vic Damone and Frank Sinatra used to sing New York, New York is a wonderful town. The Bronx is up and the Battery's down. And they'd sing the same song on two different nights, same exact lyrics and everything. And it was so different because it was tilt. So Lang, Yuja Wang, Vic Damone and Frank Sinatra, this idea that each human has a completely unique way of expressing their creativity in real time and in space. And so I wanted to talk about that invisible lean of personality, presence, and perspective that kind of seeps into everything that we touch, because that's what makes creative work human, no matter what machines do. So that pivots into the question, why do I care about AI? Well, when large language models started proliferating in 2023, well, in summer 2022, we had Midjourney Stable Diffusion and the early leanings of DALL, which is now built into ChatGPT. These are image generation models, and they're already making like really stunning images, right? Just from text description. So you describe a scene and it makes something, and usually you go, "Wow, that is pretty incredible." And then large language models came online, with Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini and several others proliferated largely in 2023. And so we saw this world where you've got a machine that can write like a human. You've got machines that can create images like humans. I knew it wouldn't be long before you would have AI making films and movies and music just like humans too. So I started asking this question, like, what does it mean to be human? Like, if a machine can reproduce all these notes, what does it mean? If a machine can produce these images that are as good or better than ours, or worse, if it produces images and we just simply can't tell anymore what's human and what's not. We can't tell if we're watching a video and it's a human speaking or a person that AI just made up. If we can't tell when we're listening to a song, if a person wrote that song, recorded that song, and sang that song, performed that song, or if an AI did it, what does that do? So I got this email from a guy named Jeremy Cowart, who's a photographer in Nashville in March of 2023, when all of these thoughts were coming into my brain, like, man, we're going to be at a place soon where we can't tell the difference between what AI is making and what we're making. And that's a problem. And sure enough, I got this email from him that said, it was called "Houston, We Have a Problem." And he describes it with dismay. And Jeremy Cowart's a big deal. Like he takes pictures of like the Obamas and Taylor Swift and Kim Kardashian and, all that, Tim Tebow. He's taken pictures of Beyonce. So he's a big photographer. And he said, my friend brought in 10 photos and said 5 of these are AI generated and 5 of these are real. Can you tell the difference? Here's a portrait photographer who has spent his adult life, developing hundreds of thousands of images of humans. And he said, my blood ran cold because I couldn't tell which ones were which. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, this is a massive, massive problem. We have a major problem indeed. And I started calling it the differentiation problem. That's a problem of not being able to tell between what AI has created and what humans have created. So that's why I care about it. I'll give you one more quick one, and that's when I was driving, and I've been monitoring artificial voice simulation for many years, like creating voices and optical character recognition leading to text and then to voice. Those technologies have been around since the 1970s. They developed with 2 doctors, a husband and wife team. They were called the Bakers. And they created something that eventually led to something called Dragon Dictate, which was something, Dragon Naturally Speaking. These are software programs that could read text and then speak them to you. Or you could speak to them and they would record this as text. And so you could basically talk and it would type, right? It's like Whisper now. And so I listened to Blinkist for a while, which is like this quick summary of works of literature that you might never read. So you can get a feel for the Odyssey in 17 minutes. It's like, oh, I'm never going to read the whole Odyssey. Come on. So I loved it. And I listened all this time, and I knew that Blinkist was playing with AI voices, but I didn't know when they were going to put it in. And I listened to 2 Blinkist summaries. And then at the end of it, it was like, did you like this summary? It was read to you by my AI avatar. And I was horrified because I literally couldn't tell the entire time I was listening. It sounded like a person. And I've been listening for this. I care about this. And I was like, I can no longer tell the difference between an AI voice and a human voice. So that's why I care about it. That's why it matters to me.
Well, so it's interesting because to your point that actually a lot of this AI stuff for large language models has actually been around for a long time. So really what ChatGPT was able to do is really scale it, right? Get so much data out there and put it together and then create these algorithms that allow you to generate text in that way. And so many ways in the research world, people thought these were really useful. So to your point about like dictation, it can actually be really, really helpful, right? If you think about you're a doctor and you're spending a lot of these times writing notes, if you can have dictation, that just makes everything much faster, right? And allows you actual time to talk to the human. You can think about it the other way too, right? If you can't really speak or you're having struggle speaking or whatever else, and you can type something and then it speaks it out, also really helpful. Thinking about Stephen Hawking, right, who couldn't always speak and needed help with that. And so there's also like really amazing things that come from this. And in the research world, that's how it felt, right? It's like, well, we're just getting to all these places, doing all these things. And then, ChatGPT releases this thing and, it's in the hands of everyone. And there's this huge spectrum. And so in this, right, so you're saying these two examples of where originally you thought it was human, you didn't really care. It's like things you trusted, right? And then all of a sudden you learn it's AI and it like totally changes what's going on. So I guess maybe this is two questions. How do you verify it's human versus AI or machines? And why does it matter, right? Why does it matter that it's AI or human?
The way that VerifiedHuman works, this organization that I founded, it's, by the way, we've got hundreds of creatives. We've got creative writers, visual artists, which pulls in like, photographers, filmmakers, anyone who's making something you can look at, even sculptors. We've got musicians, and then we've got voice actors, and you are the first content creator in VerifiedHuman. But the way that we work is it's really a self-certification process. We create a standard that says, I've not made this work using AI in these ways, and I'm willing to sign this statement saying that. And if I put this label, the VerifiedHuman label on it, it's just a trust signal to you that I have not used AI in this way. There are a lot of people that have pushed back and been like, well, can't someone cheat? And I'm like, well, of course they can cheat. Lots of people cheat on lots of things all the time. But I'm counting on most of the people in the world who have a relationship with their audience, a relationship of trust. They care about that. And they want their audience to know. And so this is really a model that's driven on human relationship and trust. And the layers to this problem are interesting. Like, how do you prove? Well, how do you prove that something is human and is not AI? And lots of people are thinking about this question. And the two primary ways that people solve this problem are legislative and technological. So the legislative way of saying, hey, we're going to solve this differentiation problem is we're going to throw laws and copyrights and all kinds of legislation at this to say it's against the law to do certain things. Using AI, it's against the law to disclose in certain ways that you didn't use AI in certain places. So these laws and copyrights or rules of the game. I lump them all into sort of this legislative, like this idea of like, we're going to create strictures or rules that we expect people to follow in order to curb this. And that is definitely one way of doing it. And laws that are being passed in Tennessee, the Elvis Act, laws that are being passed in California right now that are trying to protect human creativity, they have some impact, but they're not sufficient in and of themselves. So that's the legislative route. One of the problems with the legislative route, incidentally, is that people do what they feel is right. I don't not kill people because it's against the law to not commit murder, but I'm driven by a larger value. I'm driven by my value for human life, right? I believe human life is sacred, so that's why I don't kill people. It's not because I think I'm going to get thrown in jail if I do. So laws don't necessarily motivate people. So I mentioned that there are two primary ways of looking at it. One was legislative, the other is technological. We are going to have AI detectors, and we're going to have AI scrubbers, and we're going to have AI tools looking for people trying to cheat using AI. Or we're going to encrypt certain media. I'm a member of C2PA, which is the Coalition for Content Provenance Authority, and they're looking at different ways of putting metadata into all kinds of media, from film to songs to digital images to motion pictures. and it's a very complicated, hard work. And these models aren't going to be sufficient though, because AI does not necessarily care about a copyright. AI just makes something novel. It iterates something novel every time you ask it to. So these two ways of saying we're going to solve this differentiation problem, this we can't tell what's human, what's AI problem, is legislative and it's technological. And both are important, but neither one alone solves the problem. And that's where we come in and say, what happened to just human trust? Just looking at your audience and saying, hey, you trust me, I trust you. Thank you for being my fan. Thank you for being a person who wants to hear what I have to say. I made this for you, and I didn't use AI in these ways to make it, and I'm asking you to trust me. And that's a powerful, totally overlooked part of the experience.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So much of my work with teams and in collaboration is also about trust, right? That we really have to build trust to be able to move forward, especially in a research context when we don't know the answers. And so I totally agree with you that trust and relationships and the humanity in AI is definitely missing. And I really appreciate that you bring that out.
Some people have asked me, like, how do you verify with people? And I'm like, well, yeah, I just ask them. It's funny because like we're going through with CGPA, we're going through all this work. There are experts from like all, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, all the big media sources. And there are people from Apple and Adobe and all kinds of people in this working group that I'm in, and they're working incredibly hard to create this provenance layer for media. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if you're not sure if someone made something, why don't you just ask them? Just, where did you take this picture? What tools did you use? What kind of camera did you use? What day was it when you took this picture? Who's in the picture? Was it in Nashville? Was it in Memphis? What street was it on? Just any basic human question that a good journalist would ask, and we're not trying to surveil anyone. We're just inviting a conversation with people about their process. Like, hey, how did you make this? This is fantastic. How did you get that shot? I just ask people straight out, like, that's how we verify. We just ask human questions. Like, wow, you made that song. Tell me about your process. Like, how did you do it? How did you get that guitar to sound like that? It's funny. We just forgot to ask people, and hear the relational response. So that's what we're trying to do.
It's interesting because when we have these computers, an extra layer is there, and you're trying to bring us back to the human layer, and it's just really wonderful to get there. And I agree with you. I love questions, and so I'm all about asking. And I was a little bit surprised how easy the verified human was, but not in a bad way, in a way of, yeah, like I'm just being honest with you about where I'm at. And you'll see the verified human starting to appear. I think it appeared in our last episode, and it'll start to appear going forward. And we're not perfect, right? We are using AI, and it helps me edit it. So when everyone says wrong things, I'm able to cut it out. But at the end of the day, this is human connection. And so it's not completely AI. It's not completely just me. And so it's a nice middle ground. And I think that's also okay. And I hope people still enjoy it and don't necessarily think any less of me in that regard, because these tools can be really great and helpful. So to that point, I would love to focus on an example. And I'm bringing in a special guest today. And so I'm going to ask my special guest to introduce himself, your name only, and your favorite thing to do outside of work.
My name is Bruce Boguslav, and favorite thing to do outside of work is a combination of hanging out with my dogs and listening to music.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm now going to ask you both to answer these questions. And so we're going to focus on an example. We've talked about a lot of different creativity. And for sure, like one through line that's come up a bunch is music. And so I'm curious, what is your favorite music medium and why? And I'll start with Bruce.
Vinyl records.
Yeah.
Combination of, that's what I grew up with. Yeah, that's what I grew up with. Including, this is going to date me if my face doesn't already, Columbia Record Club, where you got records sent. I also was fortunate enough to through my father, be able to hang out with AM DJs who would hand me 45s and demo things. And so I'm addicted to vinyl, even though, other sounds, I like CDs, I like other medium for it. Vinyl still has got a warmth and an imperfection, which is like a huge part of it. Hearing it skip is kind of cool.
Bruce, can you explain what a 45 is?
That's a standard in records. It starts with even ceramic etching into some media for music is sort of the beginnings of music that's not live, that's pre-recorded in some way. A 45 is the small version of it. So when you hear that, that's not the size, it's the rep speed of the turntable. So it's 33 revolutions per minute and then 45 revolutions per minute. But it was a way to sell for less and get music out to people.
And Micah, what is your favorite music medium and why?
Definitely vinyl. I'm with Bruce. And Bruce, dude, you're so cool. The book that I wrote is called Human is the New Vinyl, but I love vinyl records for all the same reasons that Bruce said. It's warm, it's tactile. It requires you to be in the room. It's very low tech. It's the needle hitting, like literally physically contacting these micro grooves in a vinyl record, and it creating sound magically from that. I mean, this multi-dimensional spatial sound. It's like three-dimensional, um, and I don't know. It's something simple and basic about it. A 33 RPM record only holds 22 minutes of music on it. So you have to be in the room to even hear the second part of the album. If you have an album with more than 10 songs, you have to have two 33s for the double album. So it forces you to be present and in the room, and all for all those reasons. That's why I love it. It's analog, it's tactile, it sounds warm. It comes with these massive like music sleeves with like artwork and like the lyrics are all printed there. It's all a part of the experience.
And you have to get up. You're part of it. You're not distanced, right? Not only are you in the room, if you want to skip to another song, you have to get up and move the needle. When it completes one side, if you want to listen to the next, you have to get up and turn it over. So you are a part of the whole experience.
Check this out, Bruce. This is the Paul Bisa Trio, and this
Yeah.
this particular record right here was actually pressed in 1929. Isn't that so cool? This is one I found I found that at a thrift store. I bought it for $1.
No, those are great. I mean, you mentioned the album, the sleeve, the album covers, the artwork, the who played on it, all the information is there. So you are completely immersed.
So I want to also say that it's interesting with vinyl that it's actually not easy, right? We think like growing up in the day and age of more CDs and other things, skipping a song was easy, right? It was really easy to know when the next song was, and it's not true in vinyl. You have to find it, and it's like part of the experience to find it. And I have a friend who is a DJ, and he uses records, he uses vinyl, and it's really cool. He actually showcases the artwork, and that's where it really came back into my consciousness. Vinyl, and that we really don't see the artwork of the work in general, and it kind of created this whole other creative aspect to it with vinyl. So to keep going, why is music a good example for AI?
This kind of ties into our conversation about what it means to be human. We're not the only animals that make music, but we're the only animals that make music on purpose for enjoyment. And so, birds sing and animals sing and whales communicate to each other and dolphins, and they use all kinds of sounds. But I mean, we're the only ones that have been able to capture music and make it something that's replayable and re-experienceable, and something it's also a universal. All known cultures that have ever existed had some form of music. And so I loved that. And music was being threatened at the time by AI, and it's only gotten worse. I remember when Spotify was found out that they had dumped, millions of AI generated tracks into people's playlists without asking them if that was okay. And the people were just listening happily on their playlists because their playlists are smart and they just, it selects stuff for you. But I was horrified to think there are millions of people out there listening to AI generated songs that never signed up for that. And they didn't want to necessarily have that. They wanted to listen to songs by people. They didn't sign up to listen to songs by machines. The other thing that is interesting about music is that it does something in the human soul that no other medium can do. That's why the musical score to movies and to television is so incredibly important. They spend incredible amounts of time making the music fit the scene. So music was perfect. And then with the vinyl, I love vinyl, and I saw it coming back, and I realized this is a moment. This is a moment where vinyl is starting to make a comeback. Why is it making a comeback? Why over and against CDs, over against digital streaming platforms, over and against, you know, digital lossless audio, are people opting for this really inefficient, inconvenient media for music? So I just landed with music.
How about you, Bruce?
I agree with all of that, and would expand it that in an era where, when I grew up, there were no cell phones, there weren't Game Boys, nothing like that, and you were forced, and was worth it, to use your imagination or go outside and go play with people. Ultimately, it would always evolve to somebody playing drums or find music or let's go in and listen to a record or bring it outside even. It's just a way to connect with people. And it touches your soul. There's nothing like that. I mean, I can tell you experience, I'm sure all of you, certain songs come on and you just have a movie playing. You know
You go
exactly,
right
right?
back
It
there.
beats
Yeah.
right there, right? It's all it takes. And there is nothing, I don't think there's anything else in any type of form of humanity or living close to that, other things like the beginning of, I'm a huge Beatles fan, but, I'm a fan of music. I've listened to
Sweet.
everything from Irish folk music to anything is fascinating, but especially Beatles stuff. The first two notes, right? You could be any place and you just know instantaneously off of a couple notes. I've been on elevators where they piped it in, and the whole elevator, half the place is starting to sing with "Let It Be." You just see the reactions immediately, or "Hey Jude," or "Pick It."
I mean, if you walk into a stadium and if you just go na 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 na, I mean,
Exactly.
everybody will
Right.
join in, man.
Everybody goes, right? Everybody. Yeah, I just saw a YouTube video that Paul Simon did a very limited concert, and he began the song "The Boxer." The entire audience was singing with him, and by the end of it, he stopped, and they just finished it. Going back to vinyl. Vinyl really started coming back with hip hop, where they started doing the scratches,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
the sounds, and it sort of worked its way to it. And again, it's just a connection point, but it's melding. I mean, technology melded with humanity is the most interesting part of this. And truly love the idea of the verified human, because I've listened to Spotify, and yeah, you start getting suspicious of this song, and like it, just knowing it's created by a machine ruins it, for me at least. There's other people that would listen to it and have no idea, and it's perfectly fine. But the idea of recognizing it, and I think you said, going back to journalists. I mean, there are clear standards that are there. Some of them get lost, but one of the issues with journalism now is people have lost trust. And if you lose trust in it, to your point, it's over. And that bringing trust back, here, where what's out there is frightening. It's scary to some degree.
Hmm.
I've now begun using ChatGPT for my work, but I tell clients I wouldn't even think of not telling them. And that's me.
Bruce, I'll ask you, do you have one question for Micah?
Yeah. What is the acceptance level, and how do you broaden out the Verify Human and the things that you're working on to get this out to people? You're raising the pros, the cons, you're putting some boundaries around it without turning it into dogma, and creating a community, or a society where trust is important, right? And starts becoming self-policing. So there's always going to be somebody who's going to go outside the bounds. But if you have an organism that watches for that, or a label, you can bring it back in and take away the scary parts.
I've started building this for me and my friends, and my friends who are creatives, my friends who were in technology, but in creative spaces in technology. And, there are people working at Oracle that have lost their jobs now, creatives. a lot of them. And so mainly I was creating this because I saw a problem, and I just said, well, what's a way of solving this? Well, I can't get laws passed. It's too slow. It's too cumbersome, and it always lags technology. And I'm going to join C2PA, but I'm not a technologist in that sense. So what do I have? And besides, those aren't even total solutions. So what do I have? Well, I've got the trust of my friends, and I've got a way to build a website, and I've got a way to write standards that people can understand in clear language. And the idea behind Verified Human is, I was on the phone with some guys from British Columbia yesterday who are implementing the National Social Digital Wallet. It's an identity system for everybody in British Columbia. They have something like 6 or 7 million people that have already been a part of this. I couldn't figure out why I was on the phone call with them, but the most interesting question they asked me is, how do you catch cheaters? And I was like, we don't. And they were like, what do you mean you don't? I was like, well, we're not geared up to do that. Like if people want to cheat, then they have to live with themselves by looking at their own ugly face in the mirror every day. But we're not here to watchdog. We're here to help people who want to make something for their audience be able to proactively say, this is what I have done for you because I care about you. So we're really more like a fair trade label. You know how fair trade is for coffee? Fair trade is not saying this is the best coffee in the world. And they're not saying that our coffee is better than Starbucks coffee. What fair trade is saying is, if you care about the person who grew this bean, and if you want someone to be auditing the supply chain so everybody gets paid and the guy that grew the bean doesn't get screwed, then this is where you go to find that. That's exactly what Verified Human is.
Cool. That makes total sense. Yeah.
So is human versus AI a competition?
It depends on who you ask. I don't think it's a competition. I hope that it's more of us merging streams together for mutual benefit. Machines are here to help humans live better lives. Machines don't exist because they should exist. They exist because humans have made them, and usually it's to improve human life and to improve human flourishing. At least that's the idea. Maybe it's just to make money. Maybe that's the idea too. I don't know. But I hope that the first idea is stronger than the better one. We make things to make people's lives better, not we make things to get rich. I realize that both can be true at the same time, but I don't think we're in a contest against AI. I think in a healthy world, we'd be in a confluence where we're coming together to work together. When I first told the Chancellor of the University, Dr. Paul Kahn, when I first told him about Verified Human, he listened and he goes, "Oh, this sounds really cool, man." He goes, "Let me ask you a question. Why should anybody care if AI makes a picture? Who cares? If you got a party or an event and you need something quick, why go online and pay, royalty-free dollars for an image that someone took when AI can just make a free one and it's for a flyer? Who cares?" And I said, "You're absolutely right, Dr. Khan. If you're making a flyer for a pizza party, an AI-generated image is probably fine, right? It's a disposable thing. Nobody cares about it. It's not the execution of Lady Jane Grey. It's not the Mona Lisa. It's just it's a flyer for a pizza party. It's gone. It's here one week and gone the next." I said, "So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great for that. But let me ask you about this picture that you have on your wall." And it was a portrait on his wall of ships loading salt in Boston Harbor. And it was painted by a guy named John Stobart, who's a Boston artist. And Dr. Kahn loves Boston. He's like one of the visiting fellows at Harvard. So he goes, "Oh, I love that picture. That's ships loading salt in Boston Harbor in 1877." And I said, "Well, let me ask you a question. You probably paid a few $100s for that, and then you had it framed and hung in your office. Probably spent $1,000 to have that, right? And you care about it, and it's a limited edition. It's like number 17 of 700 or whatever." And I said, So what if I told you that I could create that exact same picture, but have you and Mrs. Khan sitting on the back of that skiff? Would you hang that in your office? And he looked at me and he was like, No, and I said, yeah, because that would be a cheap trick, right? It's a cheap illusion. I could do that with AI, but it wouldn't be the same because John Stobart painted this picture for a guy like you, and you bought this picture from a guy like him because he's human, and you guys share this generous vision of Boston Harbor in the 1800s together. You share that love, and that's what makes the picture special, right? That's the human part of it that makes it special, and that's why I felt like that's why I feel like we're doing all of this. That's the whole reason behind it.
I think there's also this idea of actually paying the artists for their time and work.
Absolutely.
Right. So yes, you could go to AI and make things, but to your point also about music is, it could also be stolen, right? Like there's a lot of stuff about this and a lot of lawsuits out there around how so much of what AI is taking and all the data out there is stolen, right? That the people who really made these things and their intellectual property is being taken without any credit. And where does that, like, how does that play a role into this too? And yeah, I guess I'm asking this question because to your book, the subtitle says humans win in the age of AI. It uses this terminology competition. And I guess I just want to push back on that a little bit, that to your whole point of what you said, I don't know that it needs to be a competition, right? This idea of a confluence, this idea of a relationship. And I think it's really important in the language that we use for this, because if we keep making it a competition in this way, right, even using the language of win, it really continues that fight. Where I think we ideally make it not a fight. Ideally, people can get money because they're doing something and it's worth some money, and everyone can enjoy the human connection in that too, right? Those aren't mutually exclusive, to your point as well.
Yeah, I think that's mostly how I feel. I don't know if it's exactly how I feel because I do see it as a confluence, but it's a confluence where there can be winners and losers. Okay, so humans can lose in this equation, and a lot of them are already losing. If you get on some of the forums that I'm on, you're going to hear passionate artists that are being crushed financially by AI. And I'm telling you, man, they're losing. It is a competition to them. It's not a confluence. They got washed away by the flood of AI, and now they're on a life raft in the middle of the ocean saying, how am I going to feed my family? And does anybody care about my work anymore? So for them, they are losing, and it is a competition. They're like, yeah, it's a competition, and I got fired from my job because they wiped out my entire team because now they can do it with AI. So I do feel like it is both a confluence and a competition. It's a competition in the sense that, well, if it does come down to a competition, I know who I want to win. I want the humans to win. And in every minute circumstance where it comes down to a human winning out over a machine, I want the human to always win. I'm not saying that every interaction has to be a contest, but if it comes to push or shove, and if it's like, hey, you're going to take one and leave the other, I'm taking the human every time. And I'm voting for the human every time, and I'm pushing and fighting for the human every time. I hope that the human AI interaction piece will be more benevolent than that. And I see places where it is, but I also see a lot of places where it's not.
Well, to that point, right, one big example we've been talking about is imaging. That imaging has actually been around for a long time in terms of artificial intelligence. And something that, just kind of a medical example of this, that on some level, maybe I would choose the AI over a human, is that if you have diabetes, you can have issues with your eyes. And so it's called diabetic retinopathy. And you need to get your eyes checked every so often for that condition. And if you can catch it early, right, you can kind of resolve it. But if you don't, it can really lead to big problems. And, there's not enough eye doctors in the world. And so they created an algorithm that allows this to happen, that basically triages a little bit to say who really needs to see an eye specialist and who doesn't, right? Who's just fine and can wait till the next time. And it's made a huge, huge difference in diabetic retinopathy. And in that case, if people want to become eye doctors, amazing, right? And I'd argue that there should be eye doctors all over the world. And at the same time, there's a limitation to how much we can do. And so this scale up of care has been extremely helpful and extremely impactful on people's lives and survival. And so I think it's complicated, right? To your point, it's a complicated question of, is it really a competition? What does it mean? And
Yeah, I get that. And I think in medicine and in safer driving cars and in smart home devices that keep us safer or make things more convenient? Absolutely. AI all the way. If an AI can read a radiological image better than a human, or they do it in tandem, I think that's great. Right. But I don't want an AI. I don't want to go to an AI bot to get my medical care. I want to talk to a person who is working with AI and said, hey, I looked at your chart, so did AI, and it actually caught some stuff that I didn't see. And together we're bringing you this diagnosis. But it's a human that's delivering that news to me, not like some robot like in that movie where there's this, have you received good care today? Like I don't want that. I want my doctor, Dr. Michael, to tell it to me straight, doc. Tell me what's up. In safe driving cars, I mean, my daughter, I like to say she likes to run into lots of things with her car at slow speeds. I am so grateful for AI in her car because it may keep her from having a really, really serious accident, right? So in places like this, I get it. In unlocking the human genome, in protein mapping, in robotics and manufacturing. I mean, it's all great. It's a totally different thing to talk about medicine though than to talk about poetry or painting. These artists aren't saying, I'm just losing money because of this, or I just lost my job. They're saying, does anybody even care about my work anymore? Right? In the deluge of AI slop out there, does my voice even matter to people anymore? Does my work even count anymore? Or am I completely irrelevant as a human now because AI is so big, so powerful? So it's not just about money, it's about meaning too.
Yeah, and to your point, that's happening in research as well. There's all these AI laboratories trying to say that we can do the whole process, right? Or you don't need researchers anymore. And so it's there. Like, I very much hear you. I think for me, in a beautiful world, I would love it all to be able to collaborate and push each other forward, and also be honest about it, right? To your point about trust, that we're all honest about that process throughout it. And so I'm really honest. These are the platforms that I'm using. And so I'm really happy to use VerifiedHuman and be really clear about what I'm doing. And I think more and more, when I publish journals, they're asking, are you using AI? And I don't use it for everything, but sometimes I'm like, help me write an abstract. I wrote the whole paper, just like give me the little abstract, right? Really quickly. And I'll say that, like I'll say exactly what I use it for. And I appreciate that I can do it that way.
This is an evolution that's been going on for a very long time, and there's a lot of precedent. This has come more rapidly. But if you look, like you touched on manufacturing, Micah, I dealt in the era where robots were coming in. And the initial pitches, and this is, partly the way business operates, it was, we're going to automate everything, right? We're going to bring robots in, they're going to take everybody's job. And they found that very quickly it didn't work. It just doesn't work. And we're in that same phase where put AI every place. It's going to do stuff. I think artists are always the canaries in the mine. If you guys know the history of Napster and when sharing came in, a lot of theft of copyright law, a lot of violation. It took the artists and some particular ones to stand up and say no and stop it. Napster would still be here today if it wasn't for an organized from numerous artists and then obviously some big ones that stepped in to see it, to stop it. Because to be honest, it was phenomenal. It was an amazing way to get music without paying anything. It was too good to be true for sure. And it was utterly disrespectful to folks who created it. The same with newspapers. They put things up, everything was free because they wanted to try this new technology called the web, and eventually you come back to pay. Well, AI has got further implications, but I think communication like this, the verified human, getting education out there of what it is and what it isn't, where it's working, where it's not, will change things because society is driven by all kinds of measurements, including money, motivation, and things like what you're doing, Micah, start to bound this and bring reality to it because you bring to the head people lose jobs. Well, that scares other people. It gets other people to look at things and hopefully bring them back. So just to tie it back, in the manufacturing space that I dealt with, robots were everywhere. A lot of money spent. Realize you can't do anything. You still need people to run them. You need people with expertise. Robots got thrown out and got focused on specific areas, welding, things that are dangerous to humans, but other places they got pulled because it just doesn't work. Because you could have a beautifully built, completely automated car or pick your product that no human has ever touched, and probably no human would ever buy it. And that's what starts driving the pieces back and forth. Artists go first. They're always the canary in the mine.
I love that. It's true.
Last question. What has changed in your life because of your research? What do you pay attention to more because of it?
I think my research into human and AI interaction has really forced me to slow down and be more intentional about even how I'm using AI myself. And, sometimes, as teachers, good teachers are teaching, they're actually teaching themselves the same thing. As good rabbis and pastors are preaching, they're actually preaching the sermon to themselves. I feel like that has been true. I've been this champion for humans in the human AI confluence. And so even in my own writing, and I write a lot. I write for a living. As I see AI becoming more and more easy to use in the writing process, I have to check myself, just like I'm asking all my readers to check themselves. And I have to say, hey, have I used AI in ways now that I need to disclose to my audience so that they know. And so a lot of it has been just helpful for me in centering who I am as a writer, who I am as a human being, and what I care about. The way it's changed my life is it's brought me in touch with a lot of really cool people like you and your dad and a ton of other people that are part of Verified Human. We have people in 25 different countries on all 6 continents. I'm still trying to get someone from Antarctica, but then we'll have someone on all the continents, but haven't gotten anyone from Antarctica yet. But to be in touch with these people when they sign up, I go to their websites and I listen to their voice recordings. If they're voice actors, I look at their artwork, I read their poems. I look at their short videos and films. I look at their content, and every time I'm like, how did this person find me and find us? And how what a beautiful thing now that I can call this person my friend, or at least my colleague. And so the amounts of conversations I've had over the past 3.5 years of doing this have been so humbling and so awesome.
Yeah, I agree completely. This is one thing that is really beautiful about technology, is that it does really connect us. And I think that's a really nice note to end on, that at the end of the day, a lot of what we all want is human connection, and what we're craving is human connection. And if AI and other tools can help us do that, I would love that to happen. And also remembering that that's actually the goal at the end of the day, that the goal is really that human connection and not losing that in there. And so with that, I would love for you to introduce yourself. Please say your name, your job title, and your field, and anything else you'd like to share.
My name is Bruce Boguslav. I am Mayla's dad, or Mayla's my daughter. I'm very proud of that. I am the founder and executive director of HSI Trust Home Savers. We are a national nonprofit consumer advocates that work in really across all states, assisting folks dealing with any type of financial information. And thank you, Mays, for having me.
This has been Micah Voraritskul. I'm the founder of Verified Human, and I'm the author of a book called Human is the New Vinyl: Why Human Creativity Still Wins in the AI Revolution. My book is available on Amazon and in print, and it's also an audiobook. I narrated it myself. It was really hard to do that. Didn't realize how hard it was until I tried to do it and then did it. But I did that because I really felt it was important, especially given everything we've just talked about. And I want to say thanks, Mayla, for having me. Bruce, I don't know how you generated such a wonderful and smart daughter, but you did a good job. So way to go.
This podcast is hosted by me, Mayla Boguslav, and produced and edited by Joshua Mendel. To learn more about this episode's guest and any cited or named people, take a look at the episode description. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ignorance Podcast. Please follow the Ignorance Podcast wherever you get your podcasts to learn about science through research questions. and I'll say actually after I read your book, Micah, I texted my dad. Like I was texting with my dad a little bit of like, okay, like I hear like my dad is in my head as I'm reading your book.
That's
and
awesome.
When I went home, I was like, Dad, like we have to go through your record. So I actually like I had done
Yes.
it before, right? It's not that I hadn't done it as a kid, but it gave me a whole new lens on vinyl and music and records. And so we like dug out some of these records and played them, which was really fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I just want to say thank you for that too, that I like now can actually recognize some of the things that you're saying myself, because I literally did it because of your book.
Oh, it's
So I
so
wanted
It
to
cool.
also
say
is
that too.
inspiring to hook up my turntable that hadn't been fully hooked
Yeah.
up. We changed the stylus, and you pulled out the
Nice.
door. It was she pulled out like a perfect, really wild cover. It was just wonderful to sit there and do
Oh,
it.
so cool.